Hey friends, it's Sarah. I mostly talk about sustainability here on this channel, and now I have some exciting news to share. I am moving to France. By the time you watch this, hopefully I will be navigating the administrative tasks in the west of France in a city called Angers with ease and a smile on my face. Let's keep my fingers crossed for that one. 2018, I studied abroad in France and I learned a lot of lessons when I moved there. I think I did pretty much everything wrong that you could have done wrong when moving to a new place. And now I am in 2021 moving back with experience under my belt and wanting to share the mistakes that I made so you don't make the same mistakes if you're moving to another country or thinking about moving anytime soon. Let's dive into the 10 mistakes that I made the first time around that I will not be making this time. The first mistake I made was booking 2 separate flights instead of 1 ticket just to save money. And the problem with this is if you book on 2 different airlines and 2 different tickets, these airlines are not going to communicate with each other. So if your flight happens to be delayed, which of course mine was, they can't communicate and you can't rebook with ease. So what happened to me was I had a flight from Sacramento to Los Angeles to Paris, and my flight from Sacramento to LA was delayed. Luckily, I had enough time, but I still had to get my bag from domestic, recheck it into international, and worry about, oh my gosh, my flight's delayed. So this is a headache that just avoid it. So the solution to this is this time around I booked a flight directly with the airline on their website. I booked with Air France, and it actually is the same exact route, but if one part gets delayed, then all is good. Another thing to note here is I did look at the sites on like Momondo and Skyskanner, but then I booked directly with Air France because it makes it so much easier if you don't have to go through a third party website to try to change anything on your flights. So I would recommend that 100%. Mistake number 2. This one is probably the dumbest thing I did in retrospect. Please don't laugh. I had to be at my university orientation at 9 a.m. on Friday. So of course, I booked my flight so that I would arrive in my city at 4 p.m. on Thursday. What was I thinking? I was not. Not only did I have crazy jet lag, I had 0 time to shop for anything in my apartment, any groceries, any time to figure out the layout of the city and public transit, so I was completely lost in that regard. I got like 0 sleep. I overslept in the morning and I was late to my first day of class. The solution to this is this time around I'm giving myself a whole 10 days before I start work to get settled, do everything administrative, get adjusted to the city and the time zone. Mistake number 3, it was that I arrived in my city in the evening, and it was wintertime, which meant the sun was setting early, so I really arrived in a new city at dark with all of my belongings. And even though my host city, Reims, was really safe and there wasn't any problems there, just not the best feeling to be in a new country, jet lag with all your belongings in the dark. This time around, I'm flying into Paris, and then I'm spending a night in Paris, taking a nice hot shower and getting lots of sleep before I take the train the next morning to my city, Angers. The 4th mistake I made was not knowing how to get from my train station to my apartment. I finally asked someone, which you should not be scared to do, where my apartment was, but it was still this like helpless feeling that could have very much been avoided had I actually planned. So the solution to this, I'm being extra careful because I don't want this to happen again. I'm doing a couple things. I am downloading a Google offline map of my area so that I can actually put in things even without cell service or Wi-Fi. I'm also doing a printed version of my directions. I'm looking up the route beforehand and trying to memorize the streets. The 5th mistake I made was not planning when to eat food. There's so much adrenaline going when you're moving to a new country that often you just kind of forget to get food. And I had plenty of time to eat at the train station before I was to go to my city, but I didn't. And then night came, scared and alone, so I went to the local mart. I got this like weird green pea soup, and then I put it in my new microwave, and when I took it out, I spilled it all over the floor. Being hungry and being tired is not a good combination. The solution to this time around is a couple things. I'm bringing snacks with me on the plane, some easy meals that I can put in my suitcase, And I've starred different places around my apartment that have vegetarian options for me, because that was another problem, is I couldn't just go to any restaurant because they might not have any vegetarian food. And so I've planned out where I should have my meals, and I've also have a mental note to make sure that I eat big meals before any travel. This part may be a little extra, but again, I do not want to repeat my mistakes, but I've actually picked out a couple recipes and wrote down my grocery list for the first couple days just to put it out of my mind. Now we've gotten through the crazy 24 hours that all of the first mistakes were based on. So now we're getting into more of the general mistakes that I have made. Number 6 is that I used my US debit card for all of my purchases, which meant that I had a 3% transaction fee on every single purchase. A solution to this, if you're moving long term, like I am this time, is to open a bank account in the country that you're moving to, and for some countries this can be more of a hassle. I'm looking at you, France, but I do have to get one this time around to get paid, so wish me luck. But another solution to this, if you don't want to or don't have to open a bank account, is to get a 0 transaction fee credit card. I know a lot of people recommend the Chase Sapphire card, but personally I just can't do it because Chase is one of the biggest investors in fossil fuels, and it just doesn't sit right with me. So the two that I have are the Deserve student card, which I used in university, and I really like it because it's an easy way to build credit, and then I also have a US bank card. Keeping on this money lens, mistake number 7 that I made was I didn't budget at all. France was actually a huge turning point in my financial education because I came in with my savings and I left with none of it. And from then on, I just learned a lot about personal finance and how important it is to create and stick to budgets. A solution to this, again, a little extra, but for me, what's worked is every Friday I go through all of my accounts and track every single thing that I've spent money on and kind of look at it and see, did I need to make that purchase? And this time around in France, I have already mapped out my monthly budget in line with my salary. Mistake number 8 is buying things new and not knowing how to find local thrift stores. So I didn't buy a ton when I was there, but I did find that I needed a couple things that were easily accessible at thrift stores in the US, but I just didn't know how to find them in France. So the solution to this time around is I already know the big thrift chains to go and look for. If you are going to France, I definitely recommend MO, which is a chain kind of like Goodwill, but like not as shady. Not only will this save you money when you're moving abroad, you don't have to buy everything new, it's also great for the planet. And a tip here is to figure out what thrift store is in the language that you're going to. So often in France it's called a friperie, and shopping secondhand is actually second main, like the English word second and then main, hand. Number 9, I didn't bring any English books or an e-reader, and so it was pretty difficult when I was traveling around to have like good books to read. So my solution to this time is I'm bringing 2 or 3 English books that I have bought at thrift stores, but I'm also bringing my Kindle that I just got on eBay for, it was like $30 used. And you can actually link this to your local library in the US. Check out books from your library, which will be free. The biggest mistake, number 10, that I made when I moved to France the first time was that I barely spoke French when I was there. An important thing whenever you go into a new culture is to make an effort and appreciate their culture. I'm not saying that I never spoke French, but I definitely stuck to French who spoke English and just didn't put myself out there to try to learn the language. So this time around, I'm hoping to find a couple people to do language exchange with. I'm going to be living in basically a type of social housing for young people, so I'm hoping to meet someone who wants to learn English and then they can help me with my French. It'd be a great way to meet people as well. I'm also just hoping to really make an effort with my coworkers to only speak French. We'll see if this happens. It's definitely like a big goal of mine, a career goal of mine, to be able to speak French fluently, and I think that I just need to push myself to make this effort. So if you are going to a new country and you don't speak any of the language, I definitely would recommend trying to take a class before you go and like actually try when you're there to take more classes. But if you're like me, where you're at an intermediate level, just don't be afraid to speak the language, and it honestly, I think it's gonna make my experience a lot better that I'm going to try this time. Those are all the mistakes I made. I hope you learned something from my poor planning and now my extra over planning. Since most of you are on this channel to hear me talk about climate change and sustainability, don't worry, I will still be making content about that. And I'm really, really excited to share what it is to try to live sustainably in another country and slow travel and experience a different culture in a way that's ethical and sustainable. So I hope you'll continue to join along with me in this adventure. Thank you friends for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. À la prochaine!